Let's take our Bibles. We're going to go to Hebrews chapter 12. We are nearing the end, coming to the conclusion of the book of Hebrews. We started this back in January, and I'm excited. I think we have next week and the week after that. And then we're going to take some time and focus specifically on the characters and the stories of Hebrews 11 and kind of drill a little bit deeper into the journey of faith and how it can be really messy sometimes. So that's kind of where we're headed in the next few weeks. Our bottom line today, ahead of diving into Hebrews 12, let's put that up there, is Jesus initiates faith through sacrificial love and perfects faith through loving discipline. What we want to talk about today is how do I grow, how do I develop, how do I deepen my faith and my ability to trust in the living God. And I want us to notice from this bottom line, who is the main character? Jesus is. We're going to see in the passage that Jesus is the author and finisher, or he is the founder and perfecter, depending on what translation you're reading, of our faith. And I want us to really focus in that our ability to grow and deepen our faith has very little to do with us and has everything to do with him. And we have a decisive decision that we have to make in order to activate his presence and grace, faith, growing ability in our lives. And it's what we choose to do with him in the everyday stuff of our life. And beyond that, he is the one that surrounds us through relationship and connection and discipline and love and focus to draw us into deeper faith and understanding of faith. So our goal is not to just be Sunday-only Christians. There is a country love song that talks about a Tuesday kind of love. How many of you guys know this song? It's not just a Friday or Saturday love, it's a Tuesday love. This idea that it's ordinary, it's mundane, it's routine. And I want us to lean into what does it look like for us to have a Tuesday kind of faith? A faith that is relevant, that is prevalent, that is powerful and effective even on a Tuesday, even in the midst of all of the boring, mundane things that we need to engage and initiate. So we want to ask that question, how do I increase and deepen my faith, and how does my relationship with God encourage that and engage that? So let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. While we're there, I just want to take a moment and welcome those of you in online. Judy, our online host, is ready to receive you. We really want to know you and to be known by you. So go to the DMs on YouTube or Facebook and just direct message Judy and let us know who you are and where you are watching from. We're excited to have you in with us this morning. All right, verse 1. Therefore, here's a little Bible study tip. Whenever you see the word therefore, take note. Everything we're about to discuss is based upon everything we've discussed before this moment. And we just went through the Hebrews, the Hall of Faith, Hebrews chapter 11, the week before Easter, and then we took a little bit of break for Easter, and then the week after Easter, we dove into all of these different characters. And these are men and women of great faith that are being an example for us of what faith could look like. But what we're going to look at in the Hall of Faith series that's going to follow Hebrews is that it wasn't a journey of perfect faith. Abraham struggled with faith. He messed up. He lied about Sarah. He bypassed God's promise of Isaac and had a baby with Hagar, Sarah's maidservant. But yet he is still honored as a man of faith. Why? Because he confessed and he went back to God and got right back to work. So what we're not talking about perfect faith here. We're not talking about never doing it wrong. When we do mess up in faith and trust in God, do we confess? And do we reprioritize obedience with him? You're going to see that with David in the Hall of Faith. You're going to see that with many of the characters. When we look back, it was a messy faith, but they finished with faith. And that is our goal, to finish strong in faith. And how do we do that? So therefore, in light of all that we've learned from these men and women of faith, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, how many of you guys have ever run a 5K? A half marathon? Marathon. Any sort of running. Me personally, why run? Unless you have something fun to do like basketball or baseball. Baseball is best because you run in 90-feet spurts, right? Running to run, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But the analogy that Paul, or the author of Hebrews, is going into is one of running. And I want you to imagine you've run this race And whether you're first or 400th, your people are at the finish line cheering you on. Have you experienced that? They're there to receive you and celebrate your accomplishment. All of these men and women that have gone before us, this great cloud of witnesses, this is the picture. They are going to surround us. They want us to finish, because when we finish our race of faith, they want to celebrate with us all that God has done. So that's the picture that is being laid out here. So let us lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. The picture here of sin clinging closely, your first time you get to have a date night in a long time, and your kids aren't ready for you to leave, and the babysitter shows up, and you get ready to walk out the door, and they cling to your leg, and you literally have to pry them off in order to leave, and there's kicking and screaming. That's the picture here. When it comes with sin, we need to acknowledge the fight that it is to lay it aside. I think one of our biggest issues as Christians is we don't give credence to the fight in front of us. We over-exaggerate the simplicity. We over-exaggerate. It'll take care of itself. Or we Christian cliche it to death and said, God is powerful. He is. I'm not saying that's not true. But just speaking it doesn't mean that we won't have something saying, I'm not willing to let you go. And it takes a commitment. It takes endurance to engage that, which is the next thing. And let us run with endurance. I actually am quite frustrated that word is in this passage. It should say, and let us run with comfort the race that is before us. Like with God, it should be easy, right? I should never be out of breath. Andrew and I did something yesterday. We decided to hike Table Rock. Endurance became very real to me halfway up the trail to Table Rock. And I was grateful to bump into somebody that we knew, so that we were like, yes, I have no breath to talk. You talk to us. It's one moment in my life. People, talk to us, right? Because I need to catch my breath so that we can get the rest of the way up. And let us run with endurance. This is the goal. And I want to keep this at the forefront. This isn't about comfort. God is very clear. This is a worthwhile fight. This is a significant fight, but it is a fight, and it will require endurance. It will require fortitude. It will require perseverance. The Apostle Paul in Romans talks about suffering. Like, suffering is a good thing because it leads to endurance, which leads to character development, which leads to the ability to experience godly hope. If I'm struggling with hope in my life, one question I would challenge us to ask is, how am I engaging the suffering in my life? Am I facing it with endurance, or am I fighting with comfort? Am I trying to numb my way through it, or am I facing it head on? And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter. I want you to circle that. He is the reason we can have faith, and he is the reason our faith will grow and become perfect or mature in our lives. Who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross. He's not asking something of us that he wasn't willing to do. And one of the key things is when we look to Jesus, look to his endurance. Look to the suffering that he went through and how he engaged it, and know that he faced it with joy. Why? The joy wasn't going to the cross. We see in the Garden of Gethsemane, I don't want this. Is there another way, God? The joy was, I'm willing to do it because I know what it means for the people I love. The joy before him was what benefit it would bring us, bring you and me in our lives. He endured the cross, despising the shame, and is now seated at the right hand of the throne of God. A modern day translation of that last phrase, no pain, no gain, right? There is a benefit. It's worthy to go through the pain, the struggle, because the gain is worth it. And herein is the decision that we have to really wrestle with. Do I believe that what God's promises are, that they are worth my commitment, my endurance, my loyalty to God through them? Verse 3. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. We don't just look to Jesus. We look to what he went through, because it brings to us the ability to continue, to fight, to persevere. Verse 4, in your struggle against sin, again, I'm grateful for the wisdom of the author to say struggle. This is a fight. There's going to be a step forward, there's going to be a step back. There'll be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's a struggle. But in your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding blood. Our struggle is not nearly as difficult as the struggle that Jesus went through to bring power over our sin and to give us freedom from our sin. Verse 5, and have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? Now the tone changes a little bit. My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor be weary when reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastises every son whom he receives. Yay! I just love the honesty. Like, see discipline as a good thing. I was a youth pastor for almost 20 years. And one of the biggest revelations, one of the biggest shocking realities of what teenagers would tell me is teenagers that didn't have parents that were vested in their life and did not discipline them or correct them or encourage them unto better decisions, they often relented to me the fact, I wish my parents loved me and would discipline me. It blew my mind. Now, the kids who had parents that were disciplining them were like, I wish I had their parents. But once they experienced the freedom of parents not caring what they did or didn't do, they longed for somebody to love them enough to tell them when something was destructive or bad or inadequate for the goals that they had for their life. And what we see here is a loving father. I have to admit, I read this, and the phrase in my head, because I heard it a lot when I was little, this hurts me more than it hurts you. I love you, son. But hearing it from God, who is perfect, who isn't just doing the best he can, but knows actually what is best and how to approach discipline, not punishment, discipline for instruction, it's an act of love. Verse 7, it is for discipline that you have to endure. Again, not the best motivator that I would lead with, but what he is saying is if you endure, he's referencing that Pauline teaching. If you endure the suffering, if you endure the discomfort of discipline, it will lead to perseverance, which will lead to character, which will lead to hope. God redeems even the pain points of our life for our benefit, and he says endure because in the end, it is worth it. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? And if you are left without discipline, in which we have all participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. This was the pain of the teenagers that I talked to. They didn't feel seen by their parents. They didn't feel prioritized by their parents. They didn't feel loved by their parents. And the author of Hebrews is saying, if God doesn't discipline you, then you're like illegitimate sons, and who cares? You're not the priority. But the discipline of God prioritizes his love towards us. Verse 9, besides this, we have had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Shall we not much more be subject to the Father of spirits and live? For they, speaking of these earthly fathers, disciplined us for a short time as it seemed best to them. And I love the awareness of the author here. They may have not done it perfectly. They may have been wrong. They did to the best of their ability, but notice the comparison. But he, God, disciplines us for our good because he actually knows what is good, what is right, that we may share in his holiness. He's not willing to let us just exist. He wants us to experience the benefit of living the holy life that he has called us to live and gifted us through the person and work of Jesus. For the moment, all discipline seems painful. Again, another powerful concession. Yes, it doesn't seem great when you're going through it, rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have, and notice the goal of discipline, who have been trained by it, equipped by it. Another way you could say that, empowered by it. This is for your benefit. So, what do we learn about faith as we walk through these 11 verses? We understand that Jesus initiates. We understand that his sacrificial love is what gives us the opportunity to experience it. We also understand that through loving relationship and a parental, loving, disciplined relationship, he seeks to perfect it, to equip, to guide. He is vested and interested in the way we live our day-to-day lives for our benefit. So how do I increase my faith? How do I strengthen and deepen my faith? How do I connect to this Jesus who is initiating and perfecting faith in my life so that day by day I'm growing in my faith? What does that look like? There's 3 things that I see from this passage. Number 1 is focus my gaze toward the one who sacrificed for me. And I want you to see this. We're not just looking to Jesus. We're looking to the Jesus who sacrificed for me, who engaged extreme discomfort for you and I, for our benefit, for our growth and ability to become all that he sees that we can become. Hebrews 12:2. Look at these verses, 12:2 and 3. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him. Ponder him. Meditate on him. Dwell upon him, who endured from sinners such hostility against himself. Why? So that you may not grow weary or faint-hearted. We celebrate Easter, and we look at the cross and the sacrificial reality of Jesus on Good Friday and the power of the resurrection on Easter Sunday. We may even engage some things through the Holy Week and him leading up to the cross. But what about that Tuesday, that boring, mundane Tuesday? When I wake up and go to work, am I considering the Savior, the King of Kings, the great I am who died for me? How does that reframe what I face at work that day? How does that reframe the parenting things I engage? How does that reframe my academic goals in college or high school? How does that reframe the opportunities of things that I have to engage by looking at what he has done? Why Jesus? Because faith only exists because of him. As Christians in America, we have this pull our boots up, but pull ourselves up by our bootstraps mentality. We put a lot of weight on our ability to overcome. And then when we run to our end, then we look to God. The concept here is start with God. Start with Jesus. Understand your inadequacy. Understand your inability to overcome any of this. And find the ability to be all who God called you to be. It's a dying to ourselves and a realization of our need to be fully dependent upon him. We are ones that must live dependent. But am I living dependent upon the right person or thing? The word looking here in the Greek has 2 very distinct, specific meanings. The first is to direct one's attention without distraction. And here's the key, without distraction. God doesn't want to be an add-on in our life. He wants to be the sole focus of our life. He doesn't want to be a resource in our life, a tool in our life, something that is in the toolbox that when needed we can go get. He wants to be the preeminent reality, focus, determination of our life. And what happens when we make him the focal point, we gain a perspective on life that is broader and bigger than anything we could imagine. This right here is a little looking glass. You drill a hole in the door and you put this in the door, and when somebody comes to your door, they knock on it, you can kind of look through this to see who's on the other side. How many of you guys have ever tried to figure out what's going on outside your front door looking through one of these lenses? It's a little distorted, isn't it? You don't get the full picture. Somebody can be off to the side and you not even realize they're there. Somebody could be doing something and you're not sure. But even if you see the person full on, their figure is a little distorted. This is a limited lens for which we can look at life through. And many of us are trying to discover our answers and understanding of how to live this life through career, through experiences, through materialism, consumerism, through romantic relationship, through friendship, through all different kinds of things, which are good. But if they become the focal point at which we discern all of life through, it gives us a limited understanding of what's actually happening. When we look to Jesus and through our relationship with Jesus at life, We gain a 1080 DP, a 4K perspective, reality, clarity of understanding through an eternal being that knows the past, present, and future all at the same time, leading, guiding, and directing us. But how many of us as Christians are choosing to figure out life through an inadequate lens? What the author of Hebrews is saying, turn to me, give me your ability to understand this world. Let me tell you what things mean. Let me guide and direct you. Let me give you a biblical worldview so that you can truly understand what is happening. The second thing that this word looking means, it means to develop a more precise knowledge to determine. How much do I really know about Jesus? How much do I really know about his promises? How much do I really understand his perspective? How much has his understanding of the world begun to shape my understanding of the world? How much have I determined at a heart and soul level to make him the priority of my life? It's interesting. I came across something that Andrea sent me this week, and I just kind of want to steal this information and share it with you because it really fits so well here. Did you know that there are 170 women mentioned in the Bible or alluded to in Scripture? But there is only one woman that Jesus tells us to remember. Only one. How many of you guys are thinking Mary right now? Or somebody significant like that? It's not. In the midst of a discourse about the end times, Jesus said this, remember Lot's wife. Lot's wife. Genesis 19:26, the only thing we know about Lot's wife. But Lot's wife looked back and became a pillar of salt. They were fleeing Sodom and Gomorrah, and God had rescued them. And he said, go forth through the angel of the Lord and do not look back. If you look back, you will become a pillar of salt. You will become forever stuck. So the angel of the Lord said, don't look back on what's burning down. Don't look back at what I am finished with. Don't look back at the thing I am delivering you from. Don't look back at that thing. Look forward to the future. And I understand our world is falling apart around us. It's burning down around us. There are wars and rumors of wars and all of these things. And if we look back at the thing that we want back, the America of old, the freedoms of old, the things of old, then what we do is we are looking back at something that is dying instead of looking forward to the promises of God, instead of looking forward to the future that he is calling us into. But Lot's wife looked back and she became a pillar of salt. She got calcified and stuck in a place that she was only meant to be passing through. And as Christians, when we look through the lenses of this world, we get stuck in this world. We are meant to pass through this world and having an eternal perspective, bring opportunities of transformation to all those that we come in contact with. But instead, many of us get stuck in this world with the priorities and values of this world, and we become calcified and stuck and not able to engage the future that God has for us. You see, she looked back with longing and a desire to go back. Her attachment to the past was greater than her commitment to God in the future. She wanted what she was leaving more than what God had for her in the future. And we are so busy looking back and longing for the things of old that we're not moving into the new realities and promises that God has for us. Look unto Jesus, the author and finisher, the initiator and perfecter, the founder and giver of our faith, so that we don't get stuck in this world, stuck prioritizing this world, stuck in the values of this world that ultimately leave us longing for more. The second thing I see about faith and how to develop our faith, look to Jesus, one. Number two, discern what is holding me back and discard it. I want you to see two things in this. An awareness of what's happening at a heart, soul, mental level for me, and a decision to prioritize God's direction over any other. Look at chapter 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight. I got to know what is weighing me down, and I have to decide to set it down. I know this sounds simple, but in practice, do we do this? When I wake up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, am I aware what is holding me back in expressing my faith, my trust in the guidance and power of God in the day-to-day realities of my life? Is a coworker that is holding me back bigger than the God that I serve? Is a parenting struggle bigger than the God that I serve? Is a financial problem bigger than the God that I serve? Where is my focus? What is holding me down? And when I discover, say it is finances, and I discover that God has a way to do money in the Bible of saving and generosity and budgeting and stewardship and wisdom, not seeing it as my money, but as God's money that I am stewarding for him. Am I willing to listen to his instruction, lay down my old habits and lean into the new ones? God is so holistic in his approach of guiding, leading, and directing us. Am I willing to allow him to make me aware? Am I listening to him? Am I submitting to him as the authority of what is healthy for me in my life? Ultimately, that's all obedience is. It's an expression of trusting that God knows best. Obedience is not about doing these things to get from God. It's an outcome of saying, God knows the best way to live. And if he says it, I'm going to do it because it's the most beneficial to me and to those that I love. When we listen and submit, it leads to obedience, not out of obligation, but out of a trust that he really is the loving, kind, gentle mentor that is guiding me to all the promises that he wants me to experience. We can't lay aside what is a weight if we don't live aware and assess our lives. I hate running. It doesn't make sense to me. Why run to run? For all of you runners out there, I'm sorry, but if I'm running for basketball, that makes sense. I have to run in order to play a game that I love. If I'm running for baseball or football or anything like that, it makes sense. But who in their right mind would run to run? But when we run, how many of us run with weights on? How many of you guys put 5-pound, 10-pound weights? It's hard enough to run. Why make it harder, Mark? Why do that? And that's kind of the principle that the author of Hebrews is saying. Hey, this race is going to be hard enough. What anxieties, what ambitions, what resentments, what level of greed, what level of a disobedience are you carrying on to? And all the while trying to run. So in training, Mark, you're going to put weights on so you're better at running. But when the actual race comes, are you going to ever wear extra weights in that race? The answer is no. Okay. Don't listen to Mark, all right? We shed everything we can. We wear as little as possible. I ran track in high school. It's one of the reasons I hate running so much. And when the coach gave me the uniform, I'm like, where are the shorts? You want me to wear these in public? Yeah, they're light, they breathe. I don't care about breathing, I care about covering. I really don't want to wear these. They're like, no, it's light, it's the right stuff to run in. The ability for us to feel the pain, the suffering, the struggle that we are in makes us able to be aware of what's actually happening at a heart and soul level. The biggest attack that the enemy is putting on us as followers of Jesus is an attack of distraction, of not living aware, of not creating space and silence and solitude to understand what's happening inside of my heart and soul. And God is saying, I want you to live aware so that I can pinpoint the things to cast off so that you can run with endurance. But if we become aware, then it requires a decision on what our prize is in this life. Will I make a decisive move to trust Jesus as the perfecter of my faith? Will I persevere? Will I keep going? Will I remind myself of the one who blazed the trail before me in Jesus and that whole great cloud of witnesses that are waiting at the finish line? Will I prioritize that? A major issue for us today, I really believe, is this issue of endurance. We want comfort over the ability to endure. We will never gain endurance unless we engage the pain. I will never be able to experience a runner's high until I start running. until I get to the brink of wanting to quit and push through. Then my body moves to a whole nother level of like, I can do this. I can do this. That's when hope comes in, that I can keep running. I can get to 13.1 miles. I can get to 26.2 miles. I can keep going. And I want us to consider Jacob and Esau here. In the Old Testament, these twin brothers were engaging each other and kind of at odds with each other. They were very, very different from each other. Esau goes out on a hunting trip and he comes in famished, completely hungry. And Jacob had just made some amazing stew. And Esau's like, give me some of that stew. I need that stew. I have this need. You have this thing. You should give me that. And Jacob, a cunning individual, says, I'll give you this stew. You give me your birthright. And here is the crux of the story. Esau was unable to sit in the discomfort of his hunger, and he did not consider the future consequences of this decision, and he prioritized the comfort of today over the priority of tomorrow, and he traded his birthright for a bowl of stew. All because he was unwilling to live in discomfort. He had no endurance. He had no ability to persevere. And here's the question I want us to consider. Am I sacrificing for God or am I sacrificing for comfort? It's one or the other. I either prioritize God and I say I'm willing to be uncomfortable in these hard times and lean into what God has for me in obedience. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to push through and I'll receive the prize on the other end. Or I'm going to say no to God and sacrifice my obedience to God in that moment for this experience of comfort. I came across, Tori shared with me a survey, kind of a self-survey. I want to share a few questions. If you want the whole 40 questions, it's out by the first time booth out there, and you can pick one up and take it. And then in response to this survey, there's also 40 ideas on things we can fast to engage this idea of prioritizing endurance and leaning into discomfort and to continue in our faithfulness to God. Here's a question, true or false, all 5 of them. I have a tendency to serve my immediate needs rather than willingly be uncomfortable while I wait. Go ahead and answer that by yourself right now. True or false? Which one is it? Number 2, God is not as vibrant in my life as he could be because I'm too settled in. This is one of the things when we prioritize comfort over God, our vibrancy in our relationship with God suffers. God is not as vibrant in my life. Number 3, I have neglected to do something for God because it felt too costly. True or false? How would you answer that? Number 4, I have something God has put on my heart to do, but my fear of what other people think is currently holding me back. And then the last one. If I'm honest, I want what God can do for me more than just wanting him. True or false? If you answered true to any of these questions, I want you to know I'm in that boat with you. There are days I fail in these questions. There are days I succeed in these questions. But this is the issue of faith. And it's not just a Sunday. It's not a checklist. I go to church 50 times a year. I read my Bible 5 days a week. Every day, every week of the year, I do this. No, it's the heart of the matter. Are those things that I'm doing creating a bigger faith in my life to lean into trusting and obeying God in the everyday stuff in my life? So I may have a Tuesday where I answer false to those things, or a Tuesday I answer true. That is my struggle today. But am I honest in confessing my failures, which confession is a huge part of growing our faith? We come to awareness of our inadequacy. We confess it to God. We lean on his power as the initiator and the perfecter of my faith to transform me from the inside out. My job is to decide to submit, and he does the work through his power and through my submission to him. Where am I at? Here are some things. If you are struggling like me with any of these things, here's some fasts maybe to consider this next week. I choose to fast from image building today, remembering that I was made in the image of God. So when you get ready to post that post on Instagram, Facebook, X, or whatever is out there, consider what is my motivation? Get beyond, is this okay or not? What's my motivation? How is this giving me life? What is this point of this? And if at any point in shape and time in that, you're like, it's about me shaping what other people think about me, don't post it on the platform you're using. Put it in your notes as a reminder, an altar moment of what God did. And everybody should be using Apple. It's really good and easy to put it in the Apple Notes. Android is it, but put it in your phone so you can go back privately and remember that moment. But don't do it to image bear. Why? Choose instead of realizing the truth of who I am in God. I am an image bearer of God, and I don't need anybody else's approval. And today, instead of leaning on other people's approval and praise and admiration, I'm going to lean on what God says is true about me. Number 2, today I will take a break from scrolling on my phone. This one is a lot of times, and I sit down, and I think I'm just going to check a score for the Cubs on my ESPN app, and then I end up on Instagram, and then like 30 minutes later, what have I just done for the last 30 minutes? A lot of times, if I'm honest, the reason I'm scrolling mindlessly is because there is a pain in my heart and life. There's a conviction that God is wanting me to confess. There is something that is bothering me, a problem I have to face, and I'm just distracting myself from it so I don't have to feel it. And that scrolling, as innocent as it may be, is actually distracting me from focusing on Jesus, the author and finisher of my faith. Confess that and lean into it. So maybe you fast from scrolling on your phone. Today I say no to social media envy. This may mean that I'm not going to get on it at all, or if I'm feeling envy as I see somebody else's presumably perfect life, I'm going to use that as a confession moment to say, God, right now I'm envious, and I don't need to be envious because I have you. Give me contentment, and you turn it into a confession moment. The next one, I will resist perfectionism today and trust that God loves me perfectly. For me, this is so important because when I am leaning into perfectionism, it's me earning. It's me taking the role of initiator and perfecter of my faith. Look at what I can do, God. It's not about resting in who God has already made me. Another one is today maybe fast by choosing to fast from dry, loveless rule keeping. Don't serve God today out of obligation. How do you bring heart and relational truth into the things that you're doing? I choose to fast from short-term desires today, asking God for a desire for spiritually more. Saying, I'm going to move beyond immediate comfort and say, God, I'm willing to endure the hardship. This is kind of the idea, no pain, no gain. God, I'm going to surrender to your lead, and I'm willing to do the hard thing to develop my faith, knowing that on the other end, it is so worth it. Versus distracting myself with scrolling for a short period of time, and when I get out of my scrolling, my problem is still there. And sometimes compounded because I ignored it for longer. The whole point of all of these is that we have access to God. During the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln was in his office, and he was working with one of his cabinet members, and they were laying out plans for the Civil War that was raging all around them. Outside of the White House, outside of the gate and the guard shack and all of that, there was a Civil War soldier, a Union soldier that was sitting there, and he was despondent. His head was in his hands, and he had arrived that day being told by his commanding officer that he could gain access to Abraham Lincoln to have a conversation. Because his dad and his other brother had both died in the war. He was the sole remaining son for his mom, and he needed to go home and help her with the farm so that they had a livelihood, so that they had something post-war. And he was hoping to meet with the president to get an exception from serving, that he had already served some time, but in light of my family circumstances, will you grant me leave to go home and help my mom and to grieve with my mom and to provide for my mom? But when he got there, he was refused. The guard said, no, the president is busy. You can't gain access. So he's sitting there on the front steps outside of the guard shack, outside of the fence, and his face is in his hands, and he's just completely distraught, doesn't know what to do. And this young boy walks up and says, excuse me, sir, are you okay? He goes, no, I'm not here to see the president. I need his help, and I can't get in to see him. And the young boy reached down and grabbed his hand, and because he was so despondent, the soldier just followed him. And the young boy begins to walk past the guard shack, and the soldier's like, wait, nobody said anything. And he walks into the front house, up the front steps, into the main door. He's like, wait, nobody's stopping us. What's going on? And he walks into where the president's office is, and he opens the president's office, and there he is, and all of these busy, important plans. And the president looks up and says, "Son, how are you doing today? Are you okay? Is there something I can do for you?" And Todd Lincoln says, "Yeah, Dad, this soldier really needs to see you today. And he was refused access to you, and he just needs a moment of your time." And Abraham Lincoln turned his gaze to the soldier and said, "How can I help you, son?" He told him the story. Abraham Lincoln said, "Yes, thank you for serving, and I will give you an exemption. Go home and take care of your mom and all that she needs." The whole point of the story is the son gained access to the President of the United States so that this single soldier's concerns could be heard. The Son of God is willing to grab us by the hand because he's gained access to the God of the universe. And God is saying, you may not know what your weights are, but I do. Sit with me. Listen to me. Allow me to lead you. Allow me to be the director of your life. And I will lead you into the abundant life that I have for you. The third thing we see. So we see about focusing on Jesus. We see about casting off things and through the listening to God and allowing him to lead our life, to find the freedom to engage endurance for the benefit of character development and hope. The third thing we see is live submitted to the love, care, and guidance that God provides. Look at verse 7 of Hebrews 12. It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. A piece of our ability to live aware is to trust that God knows best, even when he's correcting us, even when he's calling us out, even when he is telling us we are not measuring up, and he knows the way to give us victory. The question is, who am I listening? Who am I listening to? Who am I seeking wisdom from? Who am I seeking guidance from? The fact that we have a God that wants to discipline us is all about a God that wants to mentor us, that wants to guide us, that wants to direct us. He's not a cop around the corner waiting for you to mess up to say, aha, I got you, and here's your penalty. God is not interested in punishment. He is interested in the mentoring reality of discipline. He is interested in utilizing our failures and our confession to empower us beyond our struggle, to give us freedom from that sin that so desperately clings, that so desperately seeks to be a part of who we are. The question is, am I humble enough to receive correction from God? Am I humble enough to respond with, you're right, I am wrong? God, out of love and care, refuses to spoil us, to ignore us, and to let us get away with every rebellion, sin, or stupidity. He refuses. I remember when Madeline was young and she was playing soccer, and we were in club soccer at the time, and there was the fees that you had to pay for, and then there was the tournament expenses that you had to pay for, and then the travel expenses that you had to pay for. But there was also a uniform expense. And so as we processed through all the expense, Maddie was probably 12, 13. She was babysitting. She had a stash of cash, and she had a steady income of things coming in. We said, hey, here's what we're going to do. We'll take care of the tournament fees, the travel fees, and the club fees. What we need you to do is pay the uniform fees. So she goes to her room, and all of her ones and fives and tens, and she counts out $300 to pay the base minimum for the uniform at that time. And she walks in, I drop her off, she goes in, and she's waiting in line, and one of her friends sees that she has all this cash, and she's like, wait a minute, is that your cash? She goes, yeah, this is my cash. Why are you paying for this? Well, that's the deal my mom and I and dad and I made, that I'd pay for the uniform, they'd take care of everything else. And her friend's jaw dropped, and she was like, wait, that's what parents are for, to buy you everything you want. Why are you spending your own money? And when Maddie came back to the car, she was a little frustrated, like, why do I have to do this? And she kind of took on that perspective for a little bit. Fast forward several years, she's in college and she has all these friends and these coworkers and people. And one day she came back to Andrea and said, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for teaching me the value of money. Thank you for teaching me the value of hard work. Thank you. I am so glad that I'm not like these roommates that I have or these friends that I have. It's exhausting. In the moment, you feel this big as a parent. Oh, yeah, I need you to do this. And you're tempted to say, no, I'll take care of it. I'll find a way. But discipline in that moment, her sacrificing her money, contributed to a value in life that she experiences later in life that she is grateful for. And that's the reality of God. He is a good God who is disciplining us the right way. The difference between discipline and punishment. Number one, punishment focuses on making someone suffer for breaking the rules. That's not God's goal. Discipline is about teaching them how to make a better choice next time. Discipline means to teach. Punishment is all about penalty. Discipline exists to teach those who are willing to change and improve. Punishment is a consequence of willful disobedience of those unwilling to change. And I want you to see the difference here. For discipline to be good, it's about what God and how He engages it, but it's also about how we receive it. If we're willful in our disobedience and we are not willing to submit to the leadership of God in our life, it will feel like a punishment and we won't get the benefit of the discipline. But if we trust in the goodness of God and we surrender to His leadership in our life, discipline becomes something that is good. It's an instruction to better equip and to punish and to protect us in this life. Discipline is about inspiration for a new and better way. It's about God coaching and mentoring us into a new reality. I'll close with this story. It's a story of a parent. His son was gaining brand new freedom, and he had just got his driver's license, and they bought him a cell phone. And they said, okay, anytime you go out anywhere, the first thing you do when you arrive is you call us and let us know you're there safe. And the son's like, yeah, I got it, Dad. I just want freedom. But the first time he goes out, the son forgets. And he's there, and he's at the event, and he's having a good time, and he completely forgets. When he comes home that night, the dad has to sit down with him and says, okay, listen, the next time this happens, you're going to lose your freedom. It's a simple request. Call and let us know you arrived safely. That's all I ask. So the next weekend comes around, and he asks permission, and he goes out again, and he's at this event, and he's having a good time, and he forgets. And how many of you guys relate to this as a parent? For me, 30 minutes in, I'm a little upset. An hour in, I'm getting a little bit more angry. Hour and a half in, okay, I'm furious. Anybody relate to that, or is this just me? All right? Like I've gave you grace already. I've given you a second chance. I've given you an hour and a half of grace. Why aren't you calling? So the dad's like, that's it. I'm calling him. I'm calling him home, and he's done. He's grounded for the rest of his life, right? I am done with this. So he calls his son, and as the phone rings, it rings once on the son's end, and the dad is impressed in this moment, spiritually, by God saying, hey, treat him the way I treat you. So the dad immediately hangs up. The son, hearing and feeling the phone ring, is like, oh, stink, I forgot to call my dad. He didn't even look at the missed call. He called his dad and said, Dad, I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I should have called you. I'm here. I'm safe. Everything is good. Dad, please forgive me. I didn't mean to forget. And the dad's response is, I'm glad you're safe, son. Have a good time. I'll see you when you get home. I love this story because it really illustrates the gentle discipline of God. The dad could have lit in and said, you know what? You're done. But he didn't. The ring was a prompt to remind the son that he had messed up. The son responded in confession and humility, and the dad honored the confession and forgave him. We don't have to fear God's discipline. We have the privilege to invite His mentorship, His tutelage, His guidance, His coaching into our life, knowing that He is for us more than we are even for ourselves. And He, as the eternal God, knows absolutely what's best. Where are you at today? Where is your faith? Does it need developed and grown? We develop it through focusing our gaze on the Jesus who sacrificed for us and His sacrifice. We grow it by inviting Jesus to guide and equip us to cast off the weights that are besetting us in our race of faith. And we invite his discipline, his instruction, his correction, and humility and confession into our life. That, all about Jesus, is how we deepen our trust in an almighty, all-knowing God. Let's pray together. Father, I pray that you will open up our hearts and minds today to be aware of where we are at in our faith status. What is our health in faith? What is our health in obedience? Because obedience is just an outcome of trust. God, I pray that you will, in your gentle, compassionate, loving way, come to us, and that you will equip us to be open to hearing your instruction and enduring through the pain and discomfort of following you to experience the benefit of living a fully devoted life of fellowship with you. God, I pray you will equip us as followers of Jesus to live a life that exemplifies faith in you in the everyday stuff of life, in the Tuesdays of our life. And may it draw others into transforming relationship with you. We pray this in Jesus' name. And everyone said together, amen. Thank you guys for online and in person and worshiping with us. If it's your first time, please find somebody here today that it's their first time. Get to know them and know their story. Let them know you and know your story. Let's do life together. God bless you guys. Have a great week.